we are going to start this program. And the best beginning will be always with a recitation of Holy Quran. So I call upon our younger brother, Mr. Suhaib, to read a passage from the Holy Quran. And there will be a translation of these verses after the recitation. Brother Suhaib.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن أول بيت وضع للناس للذي ببكة مباركا وهدى للعالمين فيه آيات بينات مقام إبراهيم ومن دخله كان آمنا ولله على الناس حج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا ومن كفر فإن الله غني عن العالمين صدق الله العظيم. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent and the Most Merciful. The first house of worship appointed for men was that at Mecca, full of blessings and guidance for all beings. In it are manifest signs of Allah's guidance and the place where Abraham stood up to pray. Whoever enters it attains security. Pilgrimage thereto is a duty men owe to God. Those can afford the journey, but those who disbelieve, Allah does not stand in need of any of His creatures.
Brother Suhaib, thank you for your beautiful recitation. Brother Suhaib is the 6th standard student of the Islamic English School. Now I would request Brother Saeed Ibrahim Parker, the Secretary General of the United Indian Muslim Forum, to come forward for the welcome address. Mr. Parker will also introduce our guest speaker. Mr. Parker.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really honored tonight at this auspicious occasion to welcome you all on behalf of the President and members of United Indian Muslim Forum. We have been encouraged at the United Indian Muslim Forum by the response that we received at our earlier lecture entitled The Quran Speaks to You on 16 January at India Social Center, Abu Dhabi. Our basic objective for these gatherings is to motivate serious thinking on human life. Therefore, it is not confined to people of any specific faith. In the later stages, we hope to organize first bilateral and subsequently multilateral discussions among intelligent people believing in different ideologies. Also, our objective by organizing these lectures is to eradicate the misconceptions painted about Islam by many different factors and forces, and also at the same time by the conduct of Muslims. There are two reasons for choosing Hajj. Firstly, because it is one of the most misunderstood aspects of Islam. And secondly, because Muslims from all around the world will be performing this ritual some 25 days away from tonight at the holy city of Mecca. The same misunderstanding holds true for Hijra. We hope, inshallah, that at the end of this lecture tonight, the international message of Hajj and Hijra, things will be more clear. Now, what about the forum? It comprises of 11 different Muslim organizations from India operating in Abu Dhabi for the welfare of the society and for the cause of Islam. And mainly these organizations are based on different states of India with different native languages. To brief you, they are Indian Islamic Center, Islamic Cultural Center, Arab Hyderabad Association, Indian Islahi Center, Markaz al-Nawayat, UP Muslim Association, Anjuman Muslimin Konkan, Arab Indian Muslim Association, South Canara Muslim Association, Anjuman Bashindigana Bihar, and Emirates Muslim Association. They all are united together and they form the United Indian Muslim Forum, working for the same cause of Islam and welfare of the people. As for the distinguished speaker tonight, Mr. Ahmed Hassan, he has been a broadcaster since 1976 and a regular journalist since 1978. He has done his diploma from London School of Journalism and has had the fortune to interview several personalities, including world leaders and well-known thinkers. Through the media, he has addressed worldwide audience on religion, science, economics, and also on their compatibility. We hope that tonight's talk will generate some sort of new thinking, or rather rethinking, on life and its meaning. Now, before I conclude, I once again welcome you all, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Ahlan wa sahlan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Now, I take the privilege to invite Mr. Muhammad Farooq, the President of United Indian Muslim Forum, for his formal opening speech. Mr. President.
Dear brothers and sisters in Islam and in humanity, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As you all know that this program has been organized by the United Indian Muslim Forum, I have a great honor to preside over this function. I thank Allah the Almighty enabling us to convene this meeting. As Brother Said said, United Indian Muslim Forum, as the name itself denotes, this forum is a federation of various member associations, all of which render noble service in the cause of Islam. The message of Islam is a universal one, and so we thought to organize a series of lectures and on various aspects of Islam as to educate both the Muslims and non-Muslims alike. The first lecture in the series was held at the India Social Center a few months ago, and this is the second lecture in the series. As Brother Saeed has already mentioned in his welcome address, we have a very enlightened speaker who will tell you in deep into the subject, the international message of Hajj and Hijra. Many of our brothers and sisters here would be preparing themselves to perform the Hajj within the coming weeks, and we hope that this lecture would be a particular interest to them. At the same time, our non-Muslim brothers will be benefited from this lecture because it would hopefully be an analysis of some of the important aspects of the religion of Islam. I request you, dear brothers and sisters, to listen to the lecture carefully. Of course, there will be a question and answer session after this lecture. I also request you to ask your questions without any hesitations. With these words, I conclude my speech and declare the session open. Thank you very much.
I would like to remind you that this program is consisted of 2 sessions, in the first of which we would listen to a very enlightening lecture by our guest speaker, Brother Ahmed Hassan, and the second session would be for the questions and answers. Our volunteers would be distributing slips among you so that you can write down your questions. Some important points to note. Firstly, you have to be precise when asking your questions, avoiding lengthy introductions. Secondly, you are requested to write down your questions as neatly and clearly as you can, so that we won't find any difficulty in reading out your questions. Thirdly and finally, we request you to write down your names along with your questions. Now it's time for the lecture we have been impatiently waiting for. Brothers and sisters, we are moving down the stream of history, past and present, along with Brother Ahmed Hassan. Brother Ahmed Hassan.
My brothers in Islam, my sisters in Islam, and my brothers in humanity. Actually, before I start commenting on the subject itself, let me be very frank with you that we started the whole process here with a certain idea and a certain concept that we need to translate into reality. It's still a vision. You see, you must have noticed that in the past 10 years or so, the performance of the media, the development of the media, the overwhelming domination of the media has introduced religion to the masses. And in doing so, willingly or unwillingly, wittingly or unwittingly, consciously or unconsciously, it has also spread misunderstandings, misconceptions. And as you see, the pace of events accelerates in this world. We are seeing turmoil, we are seeing wars, we are seeing strife, we are seeing hatred, we are seeing death, killing, rancor, doubts, enmity in the name of religion. So, and whenever we discuss religion, we seem to confront more than we seem to adopt conciliatory, or at least an attitude of understanding. Now, the main reason why we wanted to talk, this is more of a trialogue. The reason why we wanted to talk to people of other faith and other religions is that let us come together, because we have come from the same God, We have come from the same creator. There is no separate creator for Jews or Christians or Muslims or Hindus or Buddhists or even atheists who don't believe in God. They have come from the same God and they are returning to the same God. They can't stop that. Whenever I speak to atheists or agnostic, I said, look brother, I am prepared to listen to you, but tell me, can you postpone death? No. I said, all right, if you can postpone death, then do you have any concept about the other dimension to where you're going? And if you don't, we are prepared to discuss it. That is the duty of your faith, to tell you what's going to happen to you in the other world. That is the basic function of religion, to guide you in this life and in the hereafter. It's not simply a matter of having certain principles or certain faiths or certain ideals in life, but something should guide you to the other world too. And if you fail to do it, then it's just like, you see, some of you may be traveling, let's say to Bombay or Delhi or let's say London or so, and you happen to take your flight from Dubai. If you start planning for Dubai only, and don't plan for Bombay, or don't plan for Delhi, or don't plan for London, or don't plan for New York, then your whole journey will be in a mess. You have just planned up to Dubai. What are you going to do after that sector? Do you have a visa? Do you have your immigration right? Do you have your papers all right? If you don't, then of course you know what will happen to your journey. Similarly, you cannot just take one dimension of this journey where we come here in this world, live 60 or 70 years, and then that's it. We have come from another world, we are going somewhere else. That is where we think that we have a trialogue, at least with our brothers the Jews, with our brothers the Christians, who come from the same ancestor, Ibrahim ﷺ. Abraham was a common ancestor. And with the Buddhists, with the Christians, with the Hindus, with the atheists, with the agnostics, we share the common ideals of humanity. We live as human beings on this earth. Whether you like it or not, you live here with them for 60 or 70 years. You are in their company. So it's your duty to have some sort of communication. That's what your God tells you. Now, I planned my talk in a very different way, but seeing the audience, I had to go back a little bit and give you a part of my personal experience, why I thought of introducing a trialogue. The simple reason was that, as I said, in the last 10 to 15 years, the media has developed a certain attitude towards religion. They are trying to decry, they are trying to defame, they are trying to malign, and they are trying to project Islam as a religion which belongs to the jungle. Hatred, violence, wars, doubts, aspersions, curtailment of freedom. And probably they do the same thing about their own religions. That is why, you see, there was this backlash in Europe which you call Renaissance. That was a backlash against the church. Similarly, the Jews. A very serious, not many people know this, that's why I took up this subject, a very serious effort was made in the United States of America where people migrated because of the lack of freedom in Europe. They went to the United States. The Americas, Canada, United States, and Mexico, and then of course South America, to get a freer atmosphere, to worship what they wanted. Those people were called the Puritans, if you remember. But all along, they displayed the same attitudes that their brethren carried in Europe. Then the Muslims started migrating to America after the First World War, after the Second World War, especially in the 60s, especially from, say, Lebanon and Syria and Pakistan, and lots of them. And then a very serious thinking started how to interact, because these were all migrants the interaction began, and one person who was very much responsible for this interaction was Dr. Ismail Faruqi. He was ultimately murdered. Now, why I brought this subject up was this, because that was the most serious attempt made by a Palestinian philosopher or a Palestinian thinker, Dr. Ismail Faruqi, to talk to the other people. It was not just saying, you are wrong, you do this and you do that, therefore you are wrong and I'm right. Once you start saying that, then it creates barriers. It doesn't help. It doesn't help. People put their shutters down. Dr. Ismail Faruqi, incidentally, was the first to start a process whereby a trialogue literally happened between the leaders of the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, and of course the Muslims in America. Dr. Faruqi started his project somewhere in the 70s. In fact, he started much earlier in the 60s. Then he was at Temple in Philadelphia. I'll tell you why I brought this subject up. It's a very interesting turning point in my own life also. And then he was murdered by the Jewish Defense League in 1985 because Dr. Faruqi's influence during the Carter era, especially Jimmy Carter, when he came to power, he also somehow the American government got interested, and then Jimmy Carter encouraged a trialogue. That was a very good opportunity for the Muslims in America to come forward and state their point of view with regard to religion, with regard to life, with regard to the principles, with regard to their practices. And Dr. Faruqi spearheaded that movement. In 1985, when both the Jewish and the Christian leaders to an extent felt, in fact, I have some records with me where a convention was held and a resolution was passed. An actual resolution was passed by a triad which said that it is time to understand the people of the other faith. But then the Jewish Defense League, the JDL, felt that if this process continued, then it would go against Zionism. Dr. Faruqi was threatened many times and ultimately he was murdered. In 1986, I was traveling through Turkey, southern Turkey. And there's a place near Izmir in southern Turkey where there is high on the mountains, there's a shrine. The Pope had been to that shrine somewhere about 2 or 3 months before I went there. And I just wanted to go and visit that shrine. Simple reason was that according to history, Mary, Mary, the mother of Jesus, migrated from Jerusalem after there was a mass massacre of the Jews from 40 AD to 70 AD. They said that the Romans massacred the Jews and there was a Hijra. So Mary migrated to a place which was considered to be safe and secure, and that is now in the southern part of modern Turkey. So this shrine is, it's very important for the Roman Catholics. So it lies to the south of Izmir, and I was just going there out of curiosity. So when I was going there, I saw a few more people who were visiting the same shrine, and one of them happened to be the Dean of Comparative Religion at the University of Temple in Philadelphia, the same university where Dr. Faruqi was murdered. This elderly woman, her name was Norma Anderson. Both of us went up. And it's high in the mountains. It's a waterfall over there. It's a very quiet place. And they said that the last days of Maryam were spent over there. So we went up, and the guide said, look, there are 2 rooms here, one for the Christians, the other is for the Muslims. I said, okay. He said, sir, are you a Muslim? I said, yes, I'm a Muslim. And he asked the other lady, are you Christian? She said, yes, I'm Christian. So he said, okay, you come this way and you go that way. So okay. She went, this is a small chapel where they worship, the candles and portraits of Mary and statues of Mary. And the Muslims have a small room where you can pray if you want to. Prayer rug is there. And on the wall of that room, Surah Maryam from the Quran is inscribed. So naturally, out of sheer curiosity, I wanted to know what is in that room where the Christians come and worship. The Pope was there. So I went there and I saw her and I asked her, is there anything very specific about this? She said, no, the candles are here and people worship and people come here out of, their great dedication and their great faith in Mary. They come here and they worship. I said, okay. And she said, what have you got? And she was a dean of the Faculty of Comparative Religion at Temple. And she said, what do you have? I said, come, I'll show you. So when she came to the room where the Muslims were supposed to go, she asked me, what is this on the wall? I told her this is a chapter from the Quran. And she said, what is this chapter about? I said, the chapter is called Mary, Maryam. She said, the Quran has a chapter which is called Maryam? I said, yes. I asked her, do you have a chapter by the name of Mary in the Bible? She said, no. I said, what kind of reverence do we have for Mary then? See, we revere Mary much more than you do. We have a chapter, entire chapter devoted to Mary. And you don't have anything of that in the Bible. There is no chapter in the Old Testament or the New Testament which is called Jesus or which is called Mary. Not even which is called Moses. I told them Surah Al-Maryam. And she said, okay, tell me what is it. So I tried to give her a translation. And she said, I never knew. I said, how could you say that? Because you are supposed to be the dean of comparative religion. And you happen to know Dr. Farooqi. He was, very greatly attached to Dr. Farooqi, but she said that when she came to the university, she had a very brief interlude with Dr. Farooqi, but she was very impressed by the man's character. So I asked her naturally that how come that you were so attached to Dr. Farooqi? She said, yes, I was very impressed by the man, but of course he couldn't find time and I couldn't find time. We were not together and I didn't know all this. So I asked her, what then do most of the Christians that come to Temple, to your university, which is regarded as the best university in the whole of the United States of America as far as religion and philosophy are concerned, what do these Christians think about the Quran? She said, they think that this was written by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I said, do you believe that? So she just shrugged her shoulders. She said, well, it's a matter of, we were just told that this is written by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I never knew that this. Then I told her that, look, if Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had written the Quran, he would have mentioned his own mother, his own wife, his own people. Why should he mention a Jewess? Why should he mention Mary? When the Muslims knew that the Roman Catholics took Mary, took Virgin Mary, as a living, almost as a living goddess. That was the Roman Catholic. She said, I never knew that. Then I told her, of course, you see, how could, do you know that the name of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has come in the Quran 5 times, 4 times as Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and once as Ahmad. 5 times. 5 times the Quran mentions the name I told her, do you know how many times the name of Jesus Christ is mentioned in the Quran? More than 22 times. So I told her, look, if this book was written, first of all, he was an ummi, unlettered person. She said, yes, I know that. I told her, how then could you correlate that this book, which is the masterpiece of, which is unequaled in its literary standards, could have been written by an unlettered person? Secondly, how could an unlettered person leave himself out, or his own kith and kin, his own family out, and put in the name of Jesus Christ? She said, I didn't know that. Then I told her something more. I said, you go back. She said, I'll read the Quran now. When I go back, I'll tell the Christians that come that no, you have to understand the Quran. It's not like that. I told her, all right, there is a chapter which is called Tahrim. It's in the 28th part of the Quran. There are 4 examples given by the Creator. 4 examples, not 2 of the worst women on earth, and that is corroborated by the Bible and the Torah and the Talmud, the Old Testament and the New Testament, which is the wife of 2 prophets recognized by the Muslims, recognized by the Jews, recognized by the Christians, Lot and Noah, Nuh alayhi salam, Lut alayhi salam. Their wives are projected in the Quran as the worst examples of women. Worst examples. And 2 of the best examples given by the Quran of women that should be emulated are not the wives of the Prophet, are not his mother, are not his kith and kin. They don't even belong to his era. One of them is the wife of Pharaoh. One of them is the wife of Pharaoh who brought up Moses, peace be upon him. Is cited as an example, exemplary. Not the Prophet's mother, not his wives, not anybody, but the wife of Pharaoh. And secondly, Sayyidah Maryam married the mother of Jesus. She is cited as the best example. Can you imagine a Jewess being cited as the best example? So she told me that, all right, when I go back to temple, I promise you something. I promise that I will communicate this to the Christians, that they should read the Quran. They should find out for themselves. They should explore, they should investigate, because we essentially come from the same source. The faith comes from the same source. Then I began thinking that what has gone wrong with us? There's something obviously that has gone wrong with us. Either we have been misled and we have not conveyed the message right, or we have been absorbed into our own lives, into our own problems, into our own affairs, that we've forgotten the essential message. You were just asked to convey, that's all. So, we thought that how best can we possibly again come back to something common. Something common, some common factors. These common factors should not be pushed aside. These common factors have to be projected. We are human beings. We are here for a brief span of time. So what was the common factor? Then we thought that, right, Hajj could be one of them because, one, as my brother pointed out, the media is projecting Hajj once again, you see. On the television, you see these millions of people. They are watched all over the world. Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, everybody. Atheists, non-believers, good, bad, evil, everybody watches this scene through the media. Millions and millions of people going around a black cubicle. in the same attire, in the same wear, in the same dress. And then they asked the question, what is this going on? What is the message of this? Why are they doing it? What good is it? What is the relevance of all this? Does it change life? Does it mean anything to me? Yes, it does. So the common factor was that Hajj actually started with the common ancestor of the Muslims, the Christians, and the Jews, Abraham, peace be upon him. It didn't start 1400 years ago, it started 5,000 years ago, nearly 5,000 years ago. That is a very important factor. So let us tell these Christians, let us tell our friends, the Christians, the Jews, and whoever believes in the book, that Hajj is the practice of your and my ancestor together. It was not introduced by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's very wrongly believed. It was introduced by the common ancestor of Jews, Christians, and the Muslims. Now, what is so significant about the life of Abraham? Because you see, the whole thing is that Abraham is a common factor. He's mentioned in the Talmud, he's mentioned in the Torah, he's mentioned in the Bible, he's mentioned in the Quran as the common ancestor. Nearly 2/3 of this world believes in one man at least. 2/3 of this world believes in one man, and that is Ibrahim alayhi salam. Abraham. He's the common factor. He, very briefly describing it for those who are unaware of it, that he was born in a place called Mesopotamia, somewhere, let's say, which is somewhere around modern Iraq, modern Iran, and modern Turkey. The original Mesopotamia included areas of modern Iraq, modern Iran, and modern Turkey. See, now they were trying to revive Babylon, and Babylon is to the east. He was born there. And he looked around and saw people being misled. He was born in the family of the chief pilgrims, the highest among the people who worshipped those idols. They were the highest form of clergy. They were the most powerful men on earth, like the Quraysh. They were the chief pilgrims. You see these common factors? He was born in that family. His father himself was, to the Christians, he would be just like the Pope. To the Jews, he would be just like the rabbi. The highest in the kingdom. And they were in league with the government, the people who ruled, Nimrod. So the Bible, the Torah, the Talmud, the Quran, all ascribe to that. And they say that he rebelled against that. He said, no, this is zulm. This is injustice. Why do you worship this? This is not common sense. This is not reason. This is rubbish. You create something out of your own hands and then start falling down it and start worshipping. And then he started thinking. And the whole thinking process is beautifully described in the Quran. He saw the stars, he saw the moon, he saw the sun around him. And then the hidayah, the guidance came into his heart. Allah Ta'ala gave him the guidance. And he turned to Allah and said, no, I worship you and you alone. I'm not prepared to share this nonsense, this injustice, that so and so and so and so and so and so. No, the Creator is one. This is common sense. This is inside you. You don't have to. When he saw the moon, when he saw the stars, when he saw the sun, his own self was communicating with them. He was communicating with them. He was asking questions. He was asking those vital questions that you and I sometimes fail to do so. That is the only natural and spontaneous and direct way of learning. Ask these questions. ask these questions. You see, we may not be worshipping idols, but we think so and so is great. Money does everything. Contacts do everything. You know, these are creations of our own mind. We are also involved in shirk in many ways. By thinking the creatures to be all powerful. So and so is all powerful. Money will solve my problems. Contacts will do the rest. So and so is my friend. The belief and the faith in one and indivisible unity of God was the principal factor. He rebelled. So he rebelled against that, and he gave up his own position. Now see, do not just judge him. Of course he was a prophet of Allah. Of course he was a prophet of God. But if you judge him from the worldly standards, that's why you ask the atheist and the agnostic who don't believe, that he had all the advantages in life. He had the money, he had the power, he had the pull, he had the best possible life could be imagined. Materialistically, in that environment, could have been his. He rebelled. He said, no, I don't want this. And he was punished. They didn't leave him alone because he was challenging their authority. He was saying Allah is one and Allah is all powerful and Allah is only God who gives the command. And God should be worshipped. Even his father went against him. His whole family, his whole kith and kin. And the holy books tell us that he was put in fire. And that's one of the most moving passages in the Quran, where the fire was given a direct command, not through the angels. The fire was given a direct command by the Creator to extinguish itself with salam upon Ibrahim. Then he was asked to leave the land. He was in exile. So he started traveling. Now, if you read the travels of Sayyidina Abraham, he traveled 5,000 years ago. Imagine the whole geography of Mesopotamia. Imagine the whole geography of what was then Palestine, which is now Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. Imagine Egypt. Of course, in those days, Egypt must have been much bigger because the reign of the pharaohs there was much on a larger scale than the modern Egypt. It included parts of Sudan, must have included parts of Libya. Very big country. He traveled through 5,000 years ago, Mesopotamia, that's Iraq, modern Iraq, entire Sham, which is Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and Jordan, entire Arabian Peninsula, which is a desert, and Egypt. You can imagine the traveling. He was in exile, and he went from place to place. He was not contented. He was asked, and then there were two of his deputies, three in fact. One was his own nephew, Lot, who was in Jordan, Transjordan. That's the East Bank, where Sodom and Gomorrah were. And then his two sons. He was asked by God to build the place, the unique and the only place of worship which will be the center for all humanity. That will be called the house of God. There is nothing in the world, in this world, which is called the house of God except the Kaaba. Not even the Christians, not even the Jews, not even the Hindus. No one claims that. No one claims that this is the house of God. And by the way, if you meet your Christian friends, and I hope they are here, tell them to read the Bible carefully. They would find that these references do exist, although in translations they've been misled. But wherever Jerusalem is mentioned, Makkah is also mentioned. There are several places where Jerusalem, of course, was called the harlot city. You know, the Ezekiel, for example, in the Old Testament, mentions Makkah as housing idols. This is the Old Testament I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the Quran. So the relevance of Makkah, the relevance of Abraham, the relevance of Hajj, the relevance of house of God, all this is there. It's mentioned. And so much has been lost in translations. You ask your friends, they don't know. They say, oh, I've never seen that. Where is it? You show them. So Makkah housed 360 idols according to the Old Testament itself. This house was built, so it became the house of God on earth. As I told you, that we do not know of any other place on this earth which is called the house of God. Some people wrongly, in fact, in India and in China and many places, in Japan, some people say, well, you also worship idol, that black, you think that's, I said, we don't call it that. We don't call it God. That's a house of God. It's not God. Who said it's God? That's the house of God that was built as a center. Then, I've always been thinking that if Hajj had continued for 5,000 years, there has to be a continuous link. There has to be a continuous link, however distorted, however corrupted, however maligned, but there has to be a continuous link. And in this continuous link, you would find one single faith all through the line. That is why, you see, when you perform the Hajj, the exact performance of the Hajj itself is a great symbol to this mankind. Millions and millions of people, can you imagine, traveling from different parts of the world, far away places. Last year I was in Argentina, and there was 2 years ago in fact, and there was a delegation going for Hajj, and you get surprised, it's right up to the South Pole. People traveling from Australia, Argentina, and so far away places, Africa, Australia, people of different colors, people of different cultures, different languages, different backgrounds, completely different backgrounds, coming all together, coming to one place. So if you take that picture from above, from the satellite, you would see suddenly during the days of Hajj, of 15 days, people from all, streams of people, streams of humanity flowing towards one center, one focus, one center, one place. I wish they do communicate from these satellites, people, millions of them traveling to one place. And when they travel, they reach a certain point from where they have to abandon their national or whatever dress they are wearing. They may be wearing suits, they may be wearing abaya, they may be wearing whatever they want, whatever they have. Lungis, they may be anything. But at that particular point, they have to abandon their nationality, they have to abandon their culture, they have to abandon their tradition, they have to abandon their tastes, they have to abandon everything. Everything. All links with this world stop there. From that place, which is called Miqat, you come in one uniform. So there are 2 to 3 million people who come in one uniform. And then there is no such spectacle on this whole earth where the rich and the poor, the black and the white and the brown and the red, the rich, the fluent, the have and the have-nots, everybody is in the same attire. For 5 days, you become what could be said as you have a direct link with your Creator. You become His subject, a direct subject on this earth. There is no other spectacle. Show me any place, any form of worship, any religion, any doctrine, whether secular or religious, worldly or unworldly, which presents a spectacle every year of millions of people in the same attire, saying the same thing, worshipping the same God, going around the same Kaaba. The idea was, and this is, you see, this came as a real surprise to me. You know, I went through this ayah several times. I've read it so many times. I've been reading a Quran all my life as a Muslim. But, you know, when I was studying the subject and وَأَذِّن فِي النَّاسِ, and Ibrahim was given the command, peace be upon him, was given the command to call the people. Now, he was given the command to call the people, not the faithful, not the believers only, not the faithful only, not those who agree with him only. No, no, no. People, people. Entire human race was invited. The entire human race was invited. وَأَذِّن فِي النَّاسِ بِالْحَجِّ. Entire human race was invited. Come, come. Because you come from the same Creator. This is your journey in life, brief journey in life, where you call yourself something, you are black, you are brown, you are white, and then you go back to the same. Those of you who've been watching this television about these Los Angeles riots, let me tell you something. I'm breaking off here, just to make an observation that in 1965, there had been similar riots. And these riots were in Chicago also, and New York partly, Houston, and part of the Americas was disturbed. And you know, you remember the Kennedy era, and Martin Luther King's murder happened later, civil rights movement, and then, you know, black and white and schools and segregation and this and that took place. In 1965, the most famous and the most well-known and the most charismatic of the black leaders of the United States of America, Malikus Shahbaz, Malcolm X. You know, they say that even John F. Kennedy was so impressed by Malcolm X that Malcolm X was a drug peddler. He was peddling in narcotics. He was in jail when he read the Quran. And then his life converted. So, he came, his reaction to racism was very strong. He called everything white evil. And when he was not guided, he even created a slogan, Nauzubillah min zalik. He used to say that black is God. You know, that was the other extreme, going to the other extreme. Or God is black. That going to the other extreme. Nauzubillah. Such was the animosity, such was the hatred against the white. So, and he kept thinking, oh, what is this problem? Why two races on this earth, both coming from the same Creator, both from the same sources, both have the same biological, both have the same physiological, both have the same psychological sources, the same original sources. Why should they differ so much? What's happening? Why is one the master, the other the slave? And 1965 he came for Hajj. Malik Faisal had invited him. And in his own autobiography, Malcolm X and the people who were with him, he had never witnessed their spectacles. He was born in almost virtual slavery in the United States. He was a drug peddler. He lived in Harlem. He lived in Chicago. He lived in Louisiana, and he had seen the worst kind of life that existed for the black community in the democratic United States of America, which calls itself the champion of human rights. But Malcolm X had seen all that. And then in the jail, as I said, he read the Quran. And when he came to Makkah, the first sight, he saw white, black, brown, red, yellow people going around the Kaaba. Going around the Kaaba in the same uniform. Incidentally, there's something very interesting about this ihram. How many of you have thought that this ihram is actually the kafan? It's the same thing. You go back to Allah with that same thing. It's actually your last dress on this earth. You go back to your Creator in the same attire. Two pieces. So Malcolm X saw entire mass of humanity, the steaming mass of humanity, millions of people, every color, every race, every ethnicity. He spoke all the languages, different cultures, different background, different geography, different traditions. You know, they wouldn't communicate with each other once they were out of that. No United Nations on earth can create that atmosphere. So he saw that, and the first thing he said was, oh, this is the solution to the racist problem of earth, on earth. The first sentence that came out of the mouth of the man who was considered to be the greatest racist in America, or the greatest living racist on this planet, because his entire speeches were full of racism, where he decried and denounced the white race and projected his own. The first exclamation was, this is the ultimate solution. This is the solution to the problem of racism. Why can't we adopt it? Malcolm X had not realized that that solution had existed for 5,000 years. It was there all the time. We were the criminals, we were the culprits who didn't convey to the world that we had the solution to all their problems in human life. So the media is doing it now. You and I are not doing it. The media is showing the world that, look, there comes a time in the Muslim year when all these people, there is millions, they come here. And they, for 5 days at least, they wear the same clothes. They worship at the same time. They worship in the same place. They do exactly the same thing. Ask them. The media doesn't show that. Ask them that this, what the Muslims are doing at the Kaaba, in the Tawaf, in the Sa'i. The Sa'i is going from one mountain, Safa, to the other mountain, Marwa. That was not the practice of introduced by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was 5,000 years ago. We are just following the ancestor. We are following the ancestor of Jews and Christians, Ibrahim alayhi salam. What is Sa'i? Sa'i is a quest for water. A mother whose child is dying because there is no water. And she, in desperation, runs from one mountain to another, looking for water, for a drop. That is Sa'i. No, it is not the act of the Prophet's wives, or his mother, or his kith and kin. No, 5,000 years ago, an Egyptian lady who, unfortunately, this is again a mistake unfortunately of the Jews, and that they treat, say, the Hijra to be a slave girl from Egypt. She was not a slave girl. Now, the recent research by Christian scholars has proved that she was not a slave girl. Anyway, the Creator liked that act of a mother looking for water for her dying child, gasping for breath, because the sun, as you know, it was a complete desert, uninhabited. There was not a blade of grass. Imagine yourself in that position. And one woman and her infant child being left alone in the scorching desert, the heat, the sand, no water, death approaching from every corner. And in that desperation, sheer desperation, she runs from one mountain to another. The other factor is about Zamzam. Zamzam is not 1,400 years old. It is not a miracle of our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Zamzam has been there, a well, for 4,500 to 5,000 years. And there are millions of people. You go there and see. You see on the television itself. Those who can't go can see it on television. That for 5,000 years, that small well, bring us another example on this earth of another well, which is feeding, which is giving water to millions and millions and millions of people, 24 hours a day, all through the year, for thousands of years. Is there any well on this earth which can match them? There's none. There's no example. So, the people who go around the Kaaba and who perform the Sa'i are doing exactly what their common ancestor, Abraham, had done 5,000 years ago. What we are trying to say here is that, look, brothers, you are not following Abraham, we are following Abraham. Read your own books. Fine, you don't believe in the Quran? Don't read the Quran. You read your own books. Iqra'u kitabakum. You read your own books. Then, the place of Arafat, the place of Mina, where these millions pray. And, of course, as you say, the media is showing this, as I said. The message is very clear, that there is only one God. And there is no difference between one human and the other. All have been created by God, the same God. There is no deluxe creation. There is no difference of quality. All have been created by the same Creator, one and the same Creator. These 2 to 3 million people who stand there are a witness. And they come there. You see, very few people know about this, especially the non-Muslims, and I want to communicate this, and those of you here who are here can say this to your friends, that Hajj imposes a very strict regularity and discipline. فَلَا رَفَثَ وَلَا فُسُوقَ وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ. It means that during those days when you are in Ihram, when you have come to Allah, don't even think about your sexual instincts have to be kept at bay completely. Don't disobey. وَلَا فُسُوقَ. And then don't quarrel, don't fight, don't injure, don't commit injustice. And if you do that, there is no Hajj. So you have to have a very, very strict discipline. Tell me, where on earth, on this earth that you and I inhabit, which place on earth can commit millions of people at one time to obey all this? By the way, in Hajj, there are millions and millions of men and women who are constantly coming into contact with each other, and no one even thinks about, I've just said that this sensualness and the attraction between a man and a woman is a very natural thing, but not even think of it. There is no place on earth which can provide this example. So, Hajj imposes a very strict discipline. It's just that the Kaaba is just like a heart, and the blood vessels are going around it. By the way, this example came to my mind because I was reading about a certain system. It's a very strange thing because some scientists do have a way of pointing out certain strange factors and which go very unnoticed. Take, for example, the movement of the electrons around the nucleus. It's anti-clockwise. anti-clockwise. The solar system, the planets going around the sun, again it's anti-clockwise. Electrons going around the nucleus, anti-clockwise. Solar system, planets going around the sun, anti-clockwise. Probably the same is true as far as the astrophysicists are concerned about the movement of the solar system within the galaxies. The fetus, the child in the womb of the mother, moves around. And the molecular biologists and the experts of genetics say that the movement is again anti-clockwise. Have you noticed that during the tawaf, the movement again is anti-clockwise? Going around the Kaaba from Hajar al-Aswad, complete one, it's the same movement. So there is some sort of synchronization in nature. There's some sort of symmetry. There's some sort of organization. And this goes to prove that this world and this universe, which is so well organized, the movement of the stars, the movement of the planets, the movement of the sun, the movement of the earth, the movement of the moon, even if it differs by a fraction, then the whole system will collapse. Do you think that all of us have been just created for the heck of it? We are not going back to our Creator. We have come from the same God. We are going back to the same God. And this indivisible unity of the human race is the ultimate message of Hajj. That we don't differ. There is no difference between black and white, brown and yellow, between the rich and the all are going back. This message has to be transmitted. This message has to be conveyed. It's just like the blood being carried to the heart. As I said, the Kaaba is just like a heart in the Muslim Ummah. Or in fact, if you take the whole world and see the map, it comes right in the center, like a heart. And the heart purifies the blood carried by the veins and puts in pure blood in the arteries, which goes back to give you energy. The person who goes to Hajj should come back with that pure blood to revitalize the organs of humanity, to give you a message. This is energy. This is the message. This is the revitalization. That ultimately you have come from the same Creator, you're going back the same, and you're all equal. That is the ultimate message of Hajj. The fact that only 20 days later we have the Muslim New Year, which is called Hijra, and even the Muslims don't know. You see, have you ever asked yourself the question, why the year begins with Hijra? With Hijra? Why did the Muslims choose this point? You see, they could have easily chosen the Hajj. Okay, we have a calendar, fine, a lunar calendar. Every year we choose the day of Hajj as the first day. Why not the 9th of Dhul Hijjah should be the first day? Or, like the other nations do, like for example, take the Christians, they treat the birth of Christ as the most important event in the history of the human race. And therefore, 1st of January. I'm sorry to interject here, but I have been reading a few Christian commentators, and some of them have pointed out that the 25th of December did not happen to be the birthday of Christ. It was, in fact, the birthday of Constantine, a Roman emperor, who made Christianity the state religion. Anyway, that's a different subject. The Jews, for example, they start their day in a different way. Their migration from Egypt, their flight from Egypt. the escape, the exodus, and of course, they link their days with the birth of Moses and all that. The Hindus start their calendar in a different way. The Zoroastrians, the ancient Persians did that in a different way. Everybody, in order to start a calendar, you select the most important event. Now, what is the most important event? To some, it is the birth of a leader. To some, it is a victory, triumph, like the Romans did, when they conquered so and so, say, okay, we start here because there's a very great triumph, military triumph. To some, it's the season, springtime, like, the Zoroastrian did that, Nowruz. To some, it is an event of where there is happiness. Like, for example, in the Hindus also believe when Rama returned from Sri Lanka, they celebrate it with Diwali, or the Sera, which is the birth of Rama, and Diwali is the return of Ram from Sri Lanka after the battle. That's why they have these torches. But diametrically the opposite way, the Muslims don't do all this. I'll give you a very brief background because this conveys the message that it was during the time of the second caliph, Sayyidina Umar, when the Muslims first had to decide how to start a calendar. Because there were two letters received, I think. One was from Yemen, the other was from Egypt. And both of these letters mentioned the month. One mentioned, I think, Shaban, the other was Ramadan. But there was no year mentioned. So it was thought that the new government and the new state is marching ahead. It has emerged out of the Arabian Peninsula, it has reached Europe, it has reached Asia, it has reached Africa, expanding. So we have to organize. We have to have a calendar of our own. Now people unwittingly, out of sheer prejudice, claim that the Muslims didn't want to accept anything from the others. They wanted all the time to introduce their own. That is not true, because if you study the background, you would find that when Syria, Palestine, what is now known as Jordan and Lebanon and Iraq were conquered, the second caliph ordered the people to learn from the Romans, to learn from the Byzantine methods of calculation, accountancy, tax reforms, land reforms, excise duties. Whole tabular sheets were prepared. How to manage a camp, how to manage the population, how to collect taxes, how to impose duties, how to distribute grain, how to have these land reforms. The farmers, the industrialists, everybody was there. There was a whole state which was operating in 3 continents. And the second caliph ordered the governors of Iraq and Sham to learn from them how they manage their own systems. In fact, in the Muslim law, there is, in fiqh in fact, there is a entire chapter which is known as ta'amul, which means you actually adapt the existing system to the best advantage possible. But when it came to having a calendar, the Muslims, there was a suggestion that, okay, adopt the Roman calendar, adopt the Persian calendar, adopt the Egyptian calendar, the sun's calendar. The Egyptians were very, very well advanced in mathematics and astronomy. Or adopt a calendar from Yemen, or adopt a calendar from the Christians and the Zoroastrians. They refused. So they said, no, we will have to have our own calendar. So, if you want to have your own calendar, where do you make a start? So there was a council, a consultative council, Shura. And many of them gave suggestions. Some said, no, the most important day in the Islamic calendar should be the birth of the Prophet. You know, they were influenced by the Christians who were living with them and the Jews. And some of them said, no, the most important day should be Yawm al-Badr, when the Muslims had the first victory. Few of them said, no, it should be Fath al-Makkah, when the Muslims reconquered Makkah. They actually conquered Makkah. They went out of Makkah and conquered it. A few of them said, no, it should be the day we entered Bayt al-Maqdis. So many suggestions came. Ultimately, one suggestion came, that no, we should start our calendar from Hijra, the migration of the Prophet and his companion from Makkah to Medina. And everybody accepted it. There was a consensus. Why I related this incident is this. The reason is this. Why did the Muslims seek the most dismal point in their whole history? Why did they consider Hijra to be the most important event in the history of entire humanity? Not the Hajj, not the birth of the Prophet, not Fath al-Makkah, not the revelation, but the day when the Prophet and his companion left Makkah. You know, in what circumstances he left Makkah? All the tribes were after his blood, after his life. And in the night, in the darkness of the night, a prophet of Allah, a prophet of the Creator, the last prophet of Creator, who had been preaching the message for 13 years in his own country, in his own place of birth, where he had lived for 53 years. 13 years he had been preaching. And they were after him. He was called the Rahmatul Alameen. 13 years. And he had to leave that place with his companion because they were after his life. They came to kill him. The Muslims chose that event because that was definitely, categorically, indisputably, unquestionably the turning point of human history. From there on, everything changed. That event in itself is a great lesson to us because, you know, although the kuffar, the non-believers, wanted to kill the Prophet, but it's very surprising. You read the seerah. I don't know how many of our non-Muslim friends do that, but there's one point that I'd like to point out here, is that although they hated him, they wanted to kill him. They wanted to take his blood. They wanted to extinguish Islam. Despite all that, they still said that he was the most trustworthy man on earth. Ameen, trustworthy. So they brought everything. Some people had their wealth, they had their gold, they had their silver, they had their wealth. They brought and said, okay, you keep it. You are the best custodian of our wealth. Although they hated him, they came to kill him. But at the same time, when it came to trust, honesty, when it came to believing in the integrity of a human being, there could be no example on this earth which can match this. You want to kill a person, and yet you say that, Anta Ameen, take my wealth and keep it, because I know that this will be safe with you. And yet you want to take his life. Can you imagine the paradox? Can you imagine the contradiction? And how many people know that the Prophet ﷺ, in that desperate moment when people were after his life, when he could have been killed any time, of course Allah was saving him, that's something else, but let's see it from the worldly point of view. He could have been killed any time. They all made a conspiracy against him. Every tribe of Makkah was involved. And he appointed his first cousin, his uncle's son, Ali ibn Abi Talib, to stay back and pay the dues, all that, what was with him as a trust. He asked him to stay back, return the amana, and then migrate, Can you imagine human character rising to that height? Sheer desperation. It was the case of an extreme emergency when you were running for your life. No one has done that in the whole span of human history. So the Muslims selected Hijra as that point which proved to be the greatest turning point in human history. It was not Fatah Makkah, it was Fatah al-Madinah. The first step towards Medina meant that entire human history was traveling with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is why the Muslims selected that. It means that for us, for the Muslims, the commandment of God comes above personalities. No personality is more important than the will of God. And that is the lesson we learn from Hijra. Hajj and Hijra, incidentally, give you the same message. Go to the entire human race. Don't be shy. Don't back out. This is your responsibility, because once you go back to your Creator, you will be asked, what did you do? You are here as a representative of the message. Go and tell them. I have been repeating that so often. You know, in my last lecture also I said this particular point, which probably some of them you misunderstood, that when I said that, what do you mean by saying قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ? I mean, if I stand here and just start saying, oh Brazilians, you would say, who is a Brazilian here? If I say, oh Australians, or oh Martians, you say, who's an Australian here? You must be joking, or you must be insane, crazy. Because there's no Brazilian here. I don't think there is any. But I'm addressing a Brazilian, I'm addressing a Martian, I'm addressing an Australian. Don't you do the same thing when you go in the mihrab, or you pray and you say, oh non-believers, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ الْكُفَّارُ مَوْجُودٌ? Are the kuffar, the non-believers, listening to you? Who are you talking to? Of course this is the Quran, of course you should read it, but what about the message? Who are you speaking to? Ya Bani Israel, are the Bani Israel listening to you? Ya Ahl al-Kitab, are the Ahl al-Kitab listening to you? They are not there in the mosque. They are not for miles and thousands of miles near you. They are not anywhere near you, thousands of miles away. Who are you speaking to? To the walls? That was the duty that was given to us, to go and tell them, to go and communicate. That look, your Creator and my Creator, we are going back to Him very soon. We don't know when death comes up. Your Creator and my Creator asks us, tells you that you are a non-believer. That is the message. But you know, the Muslims, somehow they got de-linked, disconnected. This message somewhere got disconnected. And instead of telling them what the Quran says about them, you see, nearly 1/3 of the Quran is Ya Bani Israel, Ya Bani Israel, Ya Bani Israel all the time. Do the Bani Israel know what the Quran says about them? Ya Ahl al-Kitab, Ya Ayyuhan Nas. Do the people know? It's your and my duty. These millions of people who come for Hajj, when they go back with fresh energy, with fresh iman, to revitalize the human race, to revitalize humanity, should give the message, should transmit the message, because that is the healing touch. You and I have not come here to live forever. I do not know when I will leave this earth. You do not know when you will leave this earth. Maybe our time is very near. We don't know when the call comes. So let us prepare ourselves. And that is what Hajj, and that is what Hijra tells you.
Thank you, Brother Ahmed Hassan. It was really an enlightening lecture. new horizons of wisdom and knowledge were opened in front of us through your lecture. Now we are coming to the second session of this program. Our volunteers would be distributing slips so that you can write down your questions. We are looking forward to receiving your questions. I'd like to point out that we have a limited amount of time, so you don't hesitate much to ask questions. Brother Said Park and myself would be sorting out the questions. Once again, I remind you to be precise in your questions and be clear in asking your questions. An important announcement. Our non-Muslim brothers can have free copies of Holy Quran. This offer is valid only for the non-Muslim brothers, so if any non-Muslim brother is here and if he is interested in having a free copy of the English translation of the Holy Quran, he can claim it at the exit door of this auditorium. And this scheme is sponsored by the Abu Dhabi Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we are very, very grateful to them for this service. And those brothers who are claiming the Holy Quran should register their names and addresses.
Brothers, sisters, and friends, frankly speaking, we at the forum have done our level best in order to attract our non-Muslim friends, especially for this occasion. And as we can see over here in the auditorium, the result is not very encouraging. And we are learning from our experience. As I said in the beginning, our objective is to eradicate the misconception painted about Islam and to give out the simple message of Islam without comparison of any religion. Therefore, I request to my Muslim brothers who are present here tonight that next time we are going to organize a lecture, certainly yes, inshallah al-Aziz. Next time when you come, please try to bring at least one non-Muslim friend along with you. That is the least that our Muslim brothers can do. If you personally cannot give the message, like our distinguished speaker said before a few minutes, that our duty is to go and spread the message, tell the people. If you can't do yourselves, at least try to bring a friend along with you next time when you come to the lecture. Thank you. The first question I will read. What do you actually mean by the house of God? To the speaker, please.
Thank you. I thought I made that clear. It's actually the house of God is that there should be a central place on this earth. It should be a focus. There has to be one focus on this earth which should be as I said, ascribed as the house of God, because that is the place you turn to in worship. You turn to, believers all over the world turn to one central point. As you see, whether you live in the south or the north, east or the west, you turn to the Kaaba. Therefore, Abraham, the prophet of God, was asked to build a house which would become the focus, basic focus, the central point on this earth. There is no other claim, as I explained to you, that there is no other place in the whole world, in the 6 continents, where people have claimed that this is the house of God and everybody should turn to it. No. Except as far as the Kaaba is concerned. That became the central place of worship, and wherever you are, you turn your face to the Kaaba. That is a symbolic statement. When we say the house of God, you don't say that God lives in there. It's a symbolic statement.
A request. As it is very interesting lecture, we'll be very grateful if you make the venue of the coming one at the Cultural Foundation, as it is almost well-known place from a brother of ours. This is just a request that's coming.
I don't have translation. Thank God. Sometimes you see the foundations become too cultural.
Question reads, why the non-Muslims are not allowed to visit Haram Sharif?
That's a very good question. In fact, we were expecting that. There is a very important reason for it. The reason is this, that I told you that the Kaaba was built 5,000 years ago, in fact 4,500 years ago. And it was built as a place of worship, pure, sanctified, unpolluted. Then, as the time went on, people got away from the track, distortions crept in, pollution crept in. And as you know, Iblis had taken a challenge. In fact, Na'uzubillah min zalik, but he had challenged the Creator. He said, I will sit and I will attack them and I will ambush them. I will not leave them alone. So Iblis created confusion, created distortions, and the people started associating others with God. So what they did was, every tribe eventually had its own God, own idol, and there were 360 of them. In fact, it reached a stage where if somebody came out of the house and somebody was going to a war, if a tribe was going to a war, or was traveling somewhere else, and they couldn't find any idol of their own, so they just stopped by, put some water in the sand and created one. Create an idol. That was, the psychology of a human being, which was distorted by Iblis to an extent that you wanted to have something in front of you when you worshipped, an idol, a face. That was not your original instinct. That was the distortion that Iblis had planted inside you. Random, fleeting thoughts, the evil thoughts. You know, you want, if you you must have visited or you must have seen in pictures the gods of that are worshipped in India and China and places like Southeast Asia. They're very ugly, very ugly. Teeth and blood and, you know, snub noses and the ugliest features imaginable. So the human being, after all, is a human being, and they became victims of Iblis. Therefore, they started polluting even the house of God, which was supposed to be pure, which was supposed to be sanctified. The actual purity as described in the Quran is not simply physical. It's like if I'm impure, I have a bath, and I become pure and clean and all that. No, cleanliness and purity of the soul is more important than the body. You should be clean inside, pure inside. That is a definition given by all religions of purity and cleanliness. The Quran specifically describes purity as an inner feeling. You know, of course, outer feeling is there. Of course, we wash ourselves. We don't have to be dirty. We wash ourselves 5 times a day for prayers. But the washing of yourself inside the soul and the mind, that is very important. Now, that is the najis, what was described as the impurity of kufr. Non-believing shirk is an impurity. It is pollution. It is impurity. So the Muslims were specifically instructed that cleanliness starts from inside. Purity starts from inside. Therefore, those who have shirk inside their minds, their souls, and their hearts are impure. They are unclean. However, you know, detergents they may use. They may use millions of soaps. But they are impure from inside. They stink. Because they are betraying the Creator. Instead of worshiping the Creator who created them, they're worshiping so many other things. It's just like, I'll give you a very simple example. If you are a father and your young child asks someone for money, help or something, and when you are there and you can do it, you immediately say, why do you have to go to him? Am I dead? Am I dead? You consider it a betrayal. You consider your child's performance a betrayal. You consider your child a traitor, although it's innocent. The child is innocent. But still you don't like it. You say, you come to me. You go to your mother. Why do you have to go to strangers? You come to me. I am the master of this house. Now imagine, what have you done to that child? You were not involved in his creation. You were an agency. Who created him? You? Did you make his hands? Did you make his body? Did you make his brain? Did you make his heart? Did you make his legs? No. Who created the child? Who gave it life? Your Creator. So you are betraying your Creator and thereby you are impure. That is why an essential condition was laid that if you enter the Kaaba or the surroundings, you have to be pure in heart, pure in soul, worship one God. That is the essence of the uncleanliness which is part of shirk.
Kaaba was said to be built by angels during Prophet Adam's time. Is it true?
Maybe it is. We do not have a categorical proof of when Kaaba was actually built. But of course the Quran says specifically that was the first house on earth. Maybe it was built in Adam's time, or maybe it was built even earlier. Because as we know, that the earth was inhabited by the jinn before Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. And we also know that the angels were there, the jinn were there. before the birth of Adam. So we don't know who actually built it, but it was built. But as far as the building up of Kaaba by Sayyidina Ibrahim is concerned, it is very specifically mentioned in the Quran. One point probably that most of you ignore, or rather not consider properly, is the fact that take a man traveling all the way from Iraq, and he's entering a desert, thousands of miles of desert, where there is no clue, and Makkah was not inhabited. Remember, it was not inhabited. So there must have been something guiding him to that place. Apparently, you imagine yourself in that position. There must have been some light or some other being or some sort of guide guiding him to a particular place. Because that place obviously had been chosen.
Can you quote a few verses from the Bible where Mecca has been mentioned?
Ezekiel, if you take the Old Testament, Ezekiel, which is, I'm talking about the original translation of the Bible. Many translations you would find distorted. For example, the word Faran. For example, the word Munahanna. For example, the word Farqalit. Similarly, Makkah's name has been distorted, but there are many Bibles now available which do carry the name. And if you read the chapter Ezekiel, where prophecies are being made about Jerusalem being called a harlot city, you would find the reference to Makkah, which would house 360 idols. So the fact that Abraham had been to this place is very, very apparent. All the distortions have been taken place in the translations. And one example let me give you, that in fact the word Jesus itself is not Hebrew. Jesus itself is not Hebrew. And it didn't belong to the original Syriac and the Aramaic languages. It came from the Greek translations. And the Greek translations, a number of words, for example, take John, where Jesus mentions about a comforter. A comforter would come after me. It's very clearly mentioned. And the word used is Perikalit, Farqalit, which was the title of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's a very clear indication of a prophet coming after me. And that's still there in John. Similarly, these distortions have taken place. The word Faran are actually the mountains which are surrounded, which surround Makkah. Faran is very clearly mentioned. Faran are the mountains which surround Makkah. Go and ask. So there are a number of instances in the Bible which refer and point out towards the coming of a prophet. That's another subject, and I think Brother Al-Hajj Abu Bakr Maipopo, if you've listened to him, has pointed all these things out. It would take me too long to go on that subject.
Question reads, what does the stone in the Kaaba signify, and where has it come from?
The stone in the Kaaba is called Hajar al-Aswad. There are many versions of it. One of them, it is a meteorite. The second version, according to a very great scholar and thinker, Dr. Hamidullah, who quotes from several Arab scholars and historians, is that the stone had existed from the time of Abraham, and it was planted or put or designed, or it was positioned, in fact the word is positioned, at a particular place to mark the beginning and the end of the tawaf. The stone is not regarded as part of, or is not sanctified to that extent as people believe, because sometimes non-Muslim friends have asked me, okay, you kiss the stone and you worship it. I said, no, we don't worship the stone. We don't worship the stone at all. We don't consider that stone to be God. Or we don't consider that stone to be important in the human beings. Because there's a very clear statement about the second caliph, Sayyidina Umar, who was the second caliph, Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhu, and when he was doing the tawaf, he stopped at Hajar al-Aswad, and he said that you are a stone, just simply a stone. If I had not seen the Prophet kiss it, I would never have done it. So the stone has never been sanctified in the way that non-believers believe it is.
Why the rites in the pilgrimage are more symbolic than other religious forms of worship? The rites in the pilgrimage are more symbolic than any other religious forms of worship, which means that, should I explain?
Hajj, incidentally, is a unique form of worship. There is no such thing like Hajj. In fact, one of the great Muslim Imams, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Azam, they say that when he, before he had performed the Hajj, he was asked, which is the greatest and the most symbolic of all kinds of worship? And he could never answer that question properly till he went for Hajj. And they said, no, it is Hajj, because you see, I'll explain. Hajj combines all the other forms of worship. What is Salat? It is a kind of zikr. And in Hajj, you constantly go on zikr, labbaik, labbaik, you constantly go on zikr. Always remembering God. What is Saum? Saum is keeping you away from food and drink and sexual contacts. Now, during the Hajj, in fact, in Saum, in the night, you are permitted to have sexual contact with your wives. But during Hajj, you can't do it for 5 days. It's a kind of Saum. You are permitted to eat and drink, but you cannot have any sort of sexual contact. So it's a kind of Saum. As far as the zakat is concerned, the Hajj also symbolizes zakat because of the zabiha. You distribute that flesh or that among the poor and the needy. It's a kind of paying to the needy. And the Hajj symbolizes all this plus the other rituals because it is performed once in a lifetime for those who can do it, and that is a symbolism which is before the entire humanity, because you see all other forms of worship, for example Salat, for example Saum, for example Zakat, you can do it alone, but Hajj you cannot do it alone. You can't perform your own Hajj alone. It cannot be individual. It has to be with the millions. It has to be bil jama'ah. It has to be with a group. You cannot perform it on your own. That is the basic difference, and that is why all these rituals become more symbolic in Hajj.
I have to point out that we have to abide by the limitations of time. We have to conclude this program within a few minutes. We are very grateful to you, brothers and sisters, for your enthusiasm and creative participation through asking the questions. A number of questions remain unanswered because of the lack of time. So those who feel that their questions are not answered can collect a few cards which you have left at the counter near the exit door of this auditorium, and be in touch with us because we have a religious counseling service. And I also once again remind you of the free copies of the Holy Quran. Now I invite Brother Abdurrahim Qazi for the word of thanks.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulihil Kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. The President, honorable guests and friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am here on behalf of the United Indian Muslim Forum to thank you all for your prominent presence and participation in this program. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, The one who is not thankful to the people is not thankful to Allah, the Almighty. In light of this, first of all, I offer my deep gratitude and thanks to the head of head of Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Court and the Honorary President of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, His Excellency Sheikh Sultan bin Khalifa Al Nahyan, and other officials, namely the President Ustaz Al-Haj Abdullah Al-Muherbi, First Vice President Mr. Muhammad Abdul Jalil Al-Fahim, Second Vice President Mr. Muhammad Al-Otaiba, Director General Mr. Tahir Misbal Kindi, and others, to provide us this beautiful auditorium with all the facilities and for all their cooperation. Also, I am very grateful to the speaker, Brother Ahmed Hassan, for his enlightening speech. It is very kind of him really to accept our invitation and to deliver the enlightening message of Islam to the members of different communities. Besides, I thank you all with all my heart for coming to this auspicious event and listening so attentively. Certainly, it will be profitable and guiding to each one of us. Remember, there are many points to ponder in it. Last but not the least, I offer my gratitude and many thanks to the volunteers who helped us a lot and extended their hands in organizing this program so nicely. Thank you once again all, and wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.